Hey guys, it's time to start Bollox Talks and Tangents. Lenny's over here with his technology. He actually shared before I did, and then he froze up.
Exactly. It's not moving.
Yeah. Well, you can go out and come back in. Go out and come back in.
All right, I'll go in. I'll come back.
Unplug it.
Yeah, right, exactly.
All right.
I kick it.
You know what? I think your phone's haunted.
It seems that way.
I think there's a story you're about to tell today that someone doesn't want you to tell it. So just I think it's haunted. All right, we're talking about haunted cities, and I stayed in the U.S. Did you go anywhere outside the U.S.?
No, I stayed in America.
Okay.
No, I don't know. They go speaking a foreign language. You don't understand what they're saying.
Yeah, good point.
It doesn't work out well.
All right, I've never had a ghost actually talk to me.
Oh, well.
I've had ghosts that I've had seen orbs, and I've seen presence, and I felt presence and stuff like that, but I've never had a ghost actually have a conversation with me. I had feelings,
right?
But I've never had a ghost have
feelings.
Nothing
more than
feel.
Thank you, Freddie. Right, exactly.
All right.
May I call you Mr. Fender?
But yeah, it's an interesting thing. I went and did a little bit of research, talked a little bit about one of my experiences growing up.
Yep.
Then I didn't realize I was going to find an article about everything I talked about on Tuesday night. So
it's validation.
Yeah, so it was pretty wild.
Yeah.
So it was pretty wild, and I just found that, and it was the exact chair.
Right.
Is in the article.
Yeah. Because that's not creepy at all, by the way.
It's we called it the death chair, but in here they called it the devil's chair. So but there's a lot of really cool stuff, a lot of haunted spaces. A lot of people are fearful of haunted spaces. I'm intrigued by them.
Right.
So, and you did the ghost tours, right?
I did. And I started out as a skeptic, as you may presume, but, I saw some things, and I took pictures myself. My wife will tell you, if I don't see it, touch it, or taste it, I don't believe it, so I've got to, be hands-on. Well, one of the places that when we get to St. Augustine we'll talk about called the Old City House Inn.
Mm-hmm. That's one of my favorite restaurants.
I took some pictures there that I cannot explain. I took them myself so that I can vet them, that I know what was not there and what was there. Mm-hmm. And man, oh man, I got some wacky stuff.
Well, I can tell you, there in my house, in my bedroom, there is definitely some activity. And I think it's my grandmother, but I'm not 100%. My grandmother was a fortune teller. She read tea leaves. She read some things that were pretty dark, and my grandfather, my papa, said, "You can't do it anymore." And she stopped.
Okay.
She stopped doing it. I mean, but she always was. She taught me a couple of things. After his passing, I lived with her, and she taught me a couple things. So I have a couple little reads, and when it comes to psychics, I'm not 100%, but I think it's more about reading and picking up on people.
Yeah.
And I've always been able to have that ability.
So you're a good poker player.
I'm a pretty decent poker player. I'm actually a better trumps player, like with euchre and playing hearts and things like that. So I'm a pretty good trump player.
We got to get a euchre game going.
Trump games. I'm because we played more trump games when I was playing baseball and softball than we did poker a lot of times, because you couldn't play. Texas Hold'em wasn't really a thing.
No, not then.
And we played matching pot games, which weren't really challenging and trying to bluff people out. It was fours, whores, and mustache men. It's like a 4-card game.
Right.
So it wasn't a whole lot of that interaction of I could bluff with the best of them, but
right.
I didn't play a lot of those games. Like I said, I was more of a Trump type game, and I played a lot of canasta growing up.
Okay.
So
you're an old lady even then?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was an old lady even then, and that was with my grandparents, the grandmother and grandfather that taught me all this stuff. So. I mean, I've always found it intriguing of that space, and I'm not a religious guy, but I kind of feel there is some type of reincarnation of some sort.
Well, there's people who are very religious, and there's people who are very spiritual, and for a lot of people they may overlap. For a lot of people they don't. I'm much more spiritual than I am religious. I can promise you that. So
Yeah, I'm definitely following that category.
So yeah.
So,
Who's supporting the show?
oh, this show?
Yeah.
Well,
Other than me and you.
Let's start off with what I'm drinking today. I'm drinking the Saint from St. Augustine Distillery. You're drinking the Saint over there also.
Ain't that yummy?
It is.
They're so good.
It's, to me, one of their top bourbons, if not the best bourbon they have in the distillery.
Yep.
Super smooth. They just do an amazing job over there. The tours they do, the classes they teach. If you haven't taken a class, you have somebody coming in town and you want to take a class with them, sign up for that. But their sister company, Citygate Spirits, they have some of the most amazing flavors out there. You've been able to experiment with some of those, and we've created some incredible drinks with their spirits.
We'll have more fun going forward. Yeah.
It's right there on Sponsor Row. They do an incredible job. Also, the tasting tour over there. All right, the next one we actually ate there a couple days ago. Rebecca and I and Maeve ate there a couple of days ago. Meehan's, and Blake's favorite is the mac and cheese. And I'll tell you this: the mac and cheese I had the other night could be, outside of Blake's, the one he makes, could be the best mac and cheese I've ever had.
It's fabulous. And it's not what you would call a small portion. You can get a side order of it, but the real order of it is it's copious. It's good.
Yeah.
By the way, Meehan's haunted.
Yeah, Meehan's haunted.
Meehan's haunted. Yeah, absolutely.
It was Churchill's attic when I remember playing pool in the attic up there.
And that's where some of the ghost stuff is, in the attic.
Yeah.
I did a tour there one day. I did a tour up there. For those of you who don't know, I used to do haunted pub tours, and Meehan's was one of my favorite spots because it was a great place because they had a late night menu. So if people had been drinking, they would need a little food before they go. We would finish up Meehan's, and they would get the great limited late night menu there. Bars were great. We talk about the staff there, but I had a woman on my tour who told me that who's that guy in the picture over there? And that's the picture of John Meehan on the wall. I said, oh, that's John Meehan. He owned the place. Sadly, he passed away in 2015. And she said, okay, he's sitting right over there. I said, excuse me? This is before they rearranged the upstairs oyster bar, and there was a banquette in the corner at the top of the stairs.
Yeah.
He said, no, he's sitting right there. I said, what's he doing? He said, he's sitting with his arms crossed and just watching the room. Going, okay. And she said,
that's what John would do, too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So she saw him, and then she said, and the woman you just told the story about, she's standing in the hallway right over there. I'm going, excuse me? And I'm looking down the hallway, and I'm seeing a hallway. She's seeing an elderly woman there in period clothing. So her two nieces were on the tour with us. And I went to the girls, and I said, did you forget to tell me something about your aunt? And they looked at me, and they said, what did she do now? I said, well, apparently she sees dead people. And they said, yeah, she does. She does that all the time.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. And she looked at me and said, all right, girls, we had started the tour in Chatsworth where I was talking from the front of the room, and her two nieces were in the back of the room sitting in a chair, and the aunt was standing next to me. And she said, I didn't say anything earlier, but when Lenny was doing the introduction at Chatsworth, you girls were sitting in the back, and there was a very handsome man standing between the two of you. He wasn't real. Or he wasn't alive anyway.
Yeah.
And she said, I didn't say anything to you girls because you get upset when I tell you that there's a ghost standing next to you.
Yeah.
Said, so that was, this was the aunt.
Pretty
and
wild.
It was kind of freaky. It really was.
My grandmother had those type of skills, and she was very good at reading tea leaves, and my grandmother predicted some pretty dark things.
Yeah.
And my grandfather said, you're not allowed to do it anymore. And she stopped. She just stopped doing it. But she basically could read tea leaves, and she did some other things. She taught me a couple of things. But it's pretty wild. And like I said, it comes down to being able to read people in a lot of ways, and the feelings that you pick up from people. And there's certain people that I know, I like. When you meet someone, you go, okay, this feels weird. I don't know if you've ever met someone like that. Like, okay, I've known them before, and I've met a couple of people where I'm just like, I know, not
in a previous life,
not here, but it's some other dimension or whatever you want to call it,
on a different plane.
It actually existed. So,
all right,
and it does, not in any special way or anything like that, but there was a connection there.
So if I was reading tea leaves and needing an accountant, where would I go?
You would go to you wouldn't even need tea leaves for this because you would already know you'd be watching this show and you know they're the best, and that is Aver Kresge and Associates. These guys over there, they keep me out of trouble. They don't have to read my tea leaves. They know what they're doing, and they know their numbers better than anyone. I can tell you right now, at this location, I guarantee you they had some people that had some spiritual powers and possibly some ghosts floating around out there, and that is at the St. Augustine Pirate Museum. Not necessarily at that building, but there are some floating around in St. Augustine, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
St. Augustine Pirate Museum has over 800 artifacts, original artifacts, one of 3 of the Jolly Roger flags.
Very cool.
Just a super interactive experience. Go down there, give them a try if you have not been there, St. Augustine Pirate Museum. All right, Kaiser's Deli and Market. Blake and I had lunch there today. It looks like we had a celebrity in the studio.
Yes, I believe we do though, but
he is over there working on the technical stuff over there. We have Mr. Melfi has walked into the studio.
Wow, honored are we?
We get to see a celebrity out in. Is that a ghost? It might be an orb. It might be an orb.
Do.
All right, but Kaiser's Deli, Blake, I had the Bollox pressed. Added a little bit of pepper in there with pastrami.
Did that mess up your order though? Because you went there, I had to order it for you.
You did good.
Good.
It was pressed. Kaiser probably helped you through that.
Right.
But you did excellent because you ordered before I got there, and you did the White Street.
The White Street pressed with a little bit of oil, vinegar, and a little bit of seasoning. Plus also on there ciabatta bread as well. There.
That ciabatta
nice
bread. So
that's good
solid,
stuff, right? Yeah.
But Kaiser's is the best deli in town. They have a little market there. Have a great beer selection.
Great beer selection. Great. You want to bring beer for Thanksgiving? Go to Kaiser's and get some fun stuff.
And he'll take care of you. I'm sure he'll put together a platter for you if you need to.
Yep.
Thanksgiving's just around the corner, so.
And I missed our weekly lunch today because I was having lunch with my niece, but I will be having lunch with my nephew tomorrow at Kaiser's, so I'll make up for it.
Yeah, you could have brought your niece along.
Yeah.
We're not mean like that.
No, she's lovely.
So Blake, did you hear what I heard? He's embarrassed for his friends. He didn't even bring his niece around us. You know how it is. Kind of hurtful, Lynn.
I think you're reading too much into it.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right. Well, I said I know how to read people.
Okay.
And this is why I have this company.
I know how to read a book.
I don't. This is why I have this company, Coquina Coast Realty.
There you go.
I know how to read people. I find you in the right spot. I'll get you in your forever home or your first home, your dream home. Any of those things, give me a call, 904-669-7901. That's 904-669-7901. I don't have any residents available to rent right now, but I do have office space at various sizes and amazing views here in St. Augustine. And some of these places that I'm at might be haunted.
I think the 2 buildings that you're in, very possibly.
The two buildings I'm talking about, both.
Hey, one of them, I told stories about that one.
Yeah. Yeah, it didn't really happen.
I know, but it's a great story. it's a great story, man.
Don't let the facts get in the way of a good story.
Perish the thought.
All right. All right. So your word origin.
Yes.
What did you go with?
Ectoplasm.
Ectoplasm.
You know, I try to theme with our topic.
Yeah, so Ghostbusters 2 happens to be Pete's most favorite movie of all time. Not Ghostbusters 1,
Okay.
Ghostbusters 2. So ectoplasm.
Yep.
So first explain ectoplasm and then tell me the origin of ectoplasm.
Okay, well, you got the legitimate, because there really is ectoplasm, and then you've got the paranormal ectoplasm. So the real ectoplasm is a thin, watery outer layer of a cell around the cytoplasm. And it comes from the Greek ektos, which means outside, and plasma, which is molded or formed. But as far as our purposes this evening, in the late 18th century, a couple of different people, a gentleman by the name of Emanuel Swedenborg. I like that name, Swedenborg.
Yeah.
I also think he's the chef on The Muppets, too.
Oh.
Yeah. Was a mystic, and he would produce ectoplasm where people thought And when people were doing seances or readings and things would spew out of them, that was the ectoplasm. And a lot of times it would form the face of whoever they were trying to deign in.
Like damage?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then in 1894, a gentleman by the name of Charles Richet actually coined the term as far as doing it for mysticism.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what year was that?
He did it in 1894. Emanuel Swedenborg was just in the late 18th century.
Gotcha. All right, so I'm going to go back a couple of weeks earlier than that. I'm going to go back to 1275.
A little earlier.
All right, 1275, Middle English. And the word is haunted. All right, and it actually came from the Anglo-French word hanter. All right.
Okay.
So, it's basically, hanter was kind of possessing, and then the other word that attached to it with the haunt came from home, so it was kind of a possession of the home, and so became reoccurring, and that is where haunted came from. It was an Anglo-French word hanter that kind of got mixed into Middle English in 1275. So possession of the home. Did we lose you?
Nope.
Okay.
I'm still here.
Okay, all right. I didn't know if somebody had possessed your body.
They're welcome. They're welcome to it.
I was about to.
I don't know why they'd want to.
I was about to experience some ectoplasm. Yeah. So then you said you did the ghost tours.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun doing that.
So I gave some of my childhood experiences and stuff like that. Growing up, you lived in a household of educators.
Mm-hmm.
The household of educators, where were they at with like the spiritual world?
Well, on my mother's side, her sister, when my grandmother passed away, she had a couple of secrets, and I've kind of figured out what they might have been, but that's just conjecture on my part. And when my grandmother passed away, she had told my aunt, my mother's sister, a secret. And, when my Aunt Shirley came out of the room, she was absolutely pale. Mm-hmm. So it leads me to think that, I have an idea what that might have been. But from that point on, my cousins were all just trying to figure out how they can get a medium or a seance or something to find out what my grandmother had said, because my aunt wasn't spilling the beans. So they were trying to work around. And I don't know that anything ever became of it, but I've kind of, I have an inkling of what she might have told her because of the reaction and what the only family secret on that side could have been. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, we had so many family secrets. It was just no one asked.
Right. Oh well.
Yeah, that wasn't the way it was in my family. It was like, oh, okay. No, it's a secret. Okay, all right.
Don't want.
Okay, I'm not telling you mine, so I don't want to hear yours.
Right.
In case
Safer for everyone.
In case there was a quid pro quo.
Right.
Yeah, we're not doing that. We're not doing that.
Safer for everyone.
I mean, there was a whole locker room rule in my house, and it stayed with it. So when you got to St. Augustine, mm-hmm. what attracted you to do the ghost tours?
It was sort of, I got goaded into it by a friend of mine. I had moved to St. Augustine.
Ghosted into it or?
Goaded.
Oh, goaded.
Goaded, yeah, no. Mm-hmm. A buddy of mine sold his restaurant in Long Beach a couple years after I sold mine. He moved down here as well. And then he just started working. And I'm going, yeah, well, I try not to work. Don't you understand that? And he said, no. So he kept sending me ads. So he sent me a listing for a company, Ghost Augustine. Had a great time working there. An amazing amount of paranormal equipment that they sell and that they make and sell around the world. It's phenomenal how many people are into ghost hunting equipment, let alone ghost hunting.
Okay.
And it looked interesting, and it was a guide to take people on a haunted pub crawl. So I went in, I answered the ad. I had nothing going on. I answered the ad. I spoke to him for 5 minutes. I was hired in 6 minutes, and I got my tourist guide license.
Okay, and people don't understand that. Like any tour that is given, you're required by the city of St. Augustine
be licensed
to get a license for your tourist guide license.
Right.
I've never taken that test.
Yeah.
What's the test like? Would I pass the test without studying?
Well, you probably. You know, it gets into some minutia like the Abbott Land Act, and you know, there's neighborhoods.
The Abbott tract.
Yeah, there's neighborhoods over by, you know, the Memorial Presbyterian Church.
Yeah.
So they get specific about certain neighborhoods.
Church is Flagler
Yeah.
model. Flagler model.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that, but then it's, you know, the history. When was it founded? By who? When did it become a state? Things of that nature. You know, and I'm watching our market. I'm going. It was like a 50-question test. How many can you get wrong? 15. What am I up to? 11. Okay, I made it.
Okay. Whew. Yeah.
And once you take it, you're good. And I renew my license every year.
Okay. And you have to renew it every year.
Every year. As a matter of fact,
What is it? What is it to take the license?
I think it was like $25 to take the test, and I think the renewal is $18 a year if you're a walking guide. It's a little more if you're a driving guide.
Okay.
Because there's some people that, you know, drive either a van or things of that nature. So, and I'm trying to remember because I don't remember getting my renewal from them this year. Okay. So I need to go talk to them and say, hey, what happened?
Gotcha.
Because it's the best $18 I spend every year.
Yeah, I think I'd like to go just take the test and see how I would do.
Well, they give you a guide, so you know
Okay.
you're not studying blind.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So they give you a guide, and then you say come back tomorrow, or I mean,
They only do it like 3 mornings a week.
okay.
It's quick and painless. They do it at the financial office at the end of the Lightner over on Bridge Street.
But see, I'm that person that would argue with the question if I got one wrong.
Oh, you know me well enough to know that I do that too.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I don't think this is correct.
Yeah. No, I know I got that one right. You missed it.
Right.
Yeah. I'm that guy. You know, I'm a let me speak to your manager guy.
Yes.
I'm a Karen.
That's exactly right, Karen.
I can't deny it. But I mean. So I want to start off with St. Augustine.
Okay.
Because we're all here and people have, and I'd love to hear stories of people in the audience out there that have some experiences. But the place where I used to work, I feel is very haunted. And I don't think people realize this. And that was Catalina's Gym. Catalina's Gym is one of the spookiest places at night I've ever been in St. Augustine. You know, and I've been in a lot of places. I've been in the bowels of St. Augustine and some basements you weren't supposed to be in.
Right.
Yes, there are basements. There's basements at Flagler College. There's basements, you know, in different areas. But Catalina's Gym, to me, where my office was and where the lights were completely opposite ends of the gym. So you had to turn off the lights on one side of the gym, walk through a completely pitch black gymnasium. This is before we had cell phones.
I was going to say before you had a flashlight with your cell phone.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, my beeper didn't put off that much light.
Right.
You know, so you had to kind of feel your way through there to get out of your office to go home, and the different temperature changes. Mm-hmm. Walking across that gym floor, the fact that there is no way you are ever going to convince me if you maybe take a lie detector test and they said it's haunted. My answer is going to be yes, and I'm going to pass because I 100% believe that. But Catalina's Gym to me is the most haunted space that I consistently was in, and I don't think it was a friendly haunt.
Right. Oh well.
It was more of a ominous, and it's right, and the Catalina's Gym's built on the Cuba line. Okay. So I don't know if it goes back before then, and I know a couple of people actually died in Catalina's Gym with heart attacks and some of those things because it's been there since the 50s. But you know, so I to me that's the most haunted place that I felt like, I mean, almost uncomfortable at night by myself. So, and it always seemed to happen when you're by yourself.
Yeah, of course. No witnesses.
No.
Better that way.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So, yeah. Well, you know, you've got, there's a place on Avila Street that used to be called Antiques and Uniques. It was an intriguing shop. You know, you could get shot glasses, you could get Life magazine with Elvis on the cover. You could get a full set of Frank Sinatra commemorative plates. It was all sorts of really weird stuff in there. And, you know, before it changed hands... Larry
from WFOY had that shop for a while. So
and it's perceived to be exceedingly haunted. It's one of those places where they had cameras going 24 hours a day, and it was less so for pilfering and more to see what was going on in the place at night. There were 3 spirits, because that building at one point in time was the city jail.
Oh, okay.
Right? It was the city jail. And it wasn't the county jail, it was the city jail. It wasn't the one that Henry Flagler paid to move. I don't believe that was the one that he paid to move. But, when he built...
Yeah, because the old jail is the one Henry Flagler moved there in 88, right?
Right. It had to be a mile away from the front of the Ponce de Leon Hotel.
Okay.
That was a requirement. He gave him $10,000, build it as long as it's a mile away from my front door. I don't want a jail anywhere near where my swell customers are coming to.
Yeah.
So it was either the city jail. I don't think it was the county jail. I think it was the city jail at one point in time.
But at that point, probably the city was the county.
Yeah, okay.
Very few people.
Yeah.
I mean, except for the farmers in Hastings.
Right. Who else was there?
That was growing stuff for the residents of St. Augustine,
right, and the hotel,
guests,
right,
and the guests.
Yeah.
There wasn't a whole lot left.
Yeah.
In the county.
So, but there was a free black man, a Haitian by the name of Henri,
Henri,
Henri, who when you go to those old world restaurants, and by old world I mean old traditional American restaurants, where if you're a regular customer, they end up putting a plaque on the back of the chair with your name on it.
Yeah.
Okay, I am firmly convinced that at one point in time, over the cell in this jail, it said Henri, because he was a frequent flyer.
Okay.
The guy would get himself liquored up and go be rude to women, and they'd say, "All right, Henry, let's go back in and sleep it off." So people would.
He was Otis.
Yeah, exactly. So people would see him. There was a woman on one of the because some of the tours for Ghost Augustine, when it was Antiques and Uniques, would go in there after hours, and they'd get to move around in there, and they saw some fancy stuff. One woman took a picture, and of the picture, she did a selfie, but it looked like she got a picture of Henri in her selfie. And, I'll dig it up for you. But that was kind of interesting. And where are you? Oh, here you go. So if you look in I'll give it to you. It's not going to help our viewers, but I'll show you. So that's the woman who's taking the selfie. That's her selfie. But if you look in that part of it, you see a chin, a nose, and the...
Oh, yeah.
That's Henry.
Henri.
Yep. So she got that one. But it was interesting because they'd leave the cameras on, and there were a couple little children in there. So when our guides would go in there, they would bring candy to try to draw the children's spirits out. And a lot of times it worked. There was one woman named Kayla who would go in there, and she knew those kids didn't like her because she would walk in, and there was a doll on the shelf, and every time she'd walk in, the doll would come slapping off of the shelf, and only when Kayla was there.
Wow.
And what you're talking about cold, people thought one of the rooms was a portal because there would be a huge temperature, no windows, no vents, nothing that would precipitate this. It was 15 degrees cooler in that one room than the rest of the building. But the kicker was they'd put a little ball out and leave a kid's ball on the floor, and they'd come in the next day and they'd watch the ball roll. Building's a gazillion years old, so there's no chance the floor's not level.
Yeah.
So that's fine. Until you see the ball go in the opposite direction and roll uphill. And then you sort of have to wonder. You can explain it rolling one way on a non-level floor. Hard to explain it rolling the opposite way on a non-level floor. So that was Antiques and Uniques. But the kicker is still the old City House Inn. And then Harry's, too. The ghost of Catalina haunts Harry's. And that was a house that was owned by a wealthy Spanish family that when Spain had to cede St. Augustine to the British, the family left their house, and Catalina was 11, 12, 13 at the time, loved the house, loved her garden, loved the courtyard, was devastated. They went to Cuba. 20 years later, they came back. She's now an adult woman. She's now married, and she wants to move back into her family's house. Only problem was there's a detachment of British soldiers who had used the building to store cannonballs and black powder and munitions and stuff. And these guys kind of liked the life in St. Augustine. They didn't want to go back to military drudgery. So they slow played the transfer of those munitions to the Spanish
So
as long as they could.
21.
Yep.
At that time period.
Yeah. They waited as long as they could. And no, it was earlier than that.
It was earlier than that.
It was earlier than that.
We became
Yeah.
U.S. We became U.S. in 21.
Correct.
So,
So
it would have been right around the turn of 1800.
Right. There was their 20-year period that the British had it. It was like the end of the Revolutionary War.
Yep.
The people in Florida and Georgia weren't happy that they were looking across the river and seeing British flags in Florida, so they said, you got to get out of here. And the Spanish came back. We invited the Spanish back.
Yeah.
So she comes back, and she's writing letters to the ambassador, to the governor, to whoever she could to get her house back and get the British out.
Yeah. So the English were here from like 56 to like 86 or 66 to 86, somewhere there.
That was about it.
It would have been French and Indian War.
It was earlier than
French
that.
and Indian War. The English kind of took over at that point, a little bit before that maybe, and then after the Revolutionary War, it went back to Spain.
Correct.
So
right at the end of the Revolutionary War, we gave it back to Spain.
Menorcans came here almost a couple years after that.
Right.
So it was.
Yeah, and they were they were indentured indigo farmers down in
New Smyrna.
Thank you.
So,
but this young woman had a fight to. She's now.
Is that on the test?
Possibly.
Menorcans on the test?
Possibly.
Okay. All right. I might pass that part.
I think you might pass the whole test. You can get 15 wrong, you'll be golden.
Get your degree.
It's right. It's a low bar.
So you can get 70%. And you still get it. Okay.
But she finally gets the house back, and it's a shambles because the British just beat the shit out of it. Yeah. So she gets it back. So she's no fool. She uses her husband's money to renovate and rebuild the house. So she does that. She moves back in. Her husband subsequently passes away, but she's now happy as can be back in her homestead, living in her own house. And she left the first time. She was not leaving the second time, and she is still there. It's one of those things where you don't want to walk around going, Catalina, come out and play, because she might.
Oh.
And, it's apparently up around the bathroom on the second floor where she gets spotted mostly. I've heard stories from a lot of the staff there that, they'll be in the storeroom on the third floor, and they'll be standing in the middle of the room, and they get tapped in the back, and they look around, and there's nobody in the room with them, and that's it. I have one guy who was a bartender who said, never going up in that storeroom ever again. Nope, won't do it. And I was there on a tour where, we're up there on the second floor, and we're just, rummaging around up there because, who can control us? And sure enough, people were seeing the apparition of Catalina walking past them. It was wacky. It was really wacky.
No stinking badges.
Nope, not for that.
All right.
But the real killer I have is at the Old City House Inn, where there's a number of different paranormal happenings.
That's one of my favorite places to eat.
It's great. The food is good,
food.
right? Yep.
Wonderful food.
Yep. But there's a tremendous amount
Rebecca, I'm going to take you there. Next date night, we're going there.
Nice. Good. Do you remember on the mantle, there's a drawing on, it looks like almost cardboard. I tease it looks like Geraldo Rivera.
Okay.
But it's the drawing of a Spanish soldier. There was I don't know if he was a priest, a reverend, but there was a man of the cloth who was also a medium or a sensitive to some degree.
Okay.
He could have been extra large, but he was sensitive. And he comes walking up the hallway to get into the building, and he sees an apparition in front of him. And he goes in, and he draws this caricature, which is now on the mantelpiece there, of a Spanish soldier with a line across his forehead.
Okay.
And apparently he found out
Was it a lightning bolt? Was it Harry Potter?
No, it wasn't. It was just a straight line that Cordova Street over there was the western terminus of the city. At one point in time, there's a creek there, and before it was the City House Inn, it was a military garrison, a little military base where it was a basically the sentry post, because that was the southern end of the city.
Well, the march was right there.
Right, it was the
You know,
southern
a
end
lot
of the
of
city.
people, I don't think, realize that where Leitner was, Flagler filled in the back side of that because that was marsh. Lake Sanchez actually came all the way up to the back of Leitner property.
So you're going to do very well in the quiz.
He filled in that space. Yeah. He filled in that space. So that was, like you said, the southernmost point of the city.
And and the Spanish were smart because they used a lot of natural obstructions to protect the city. Mm-hmm. The creek that was there, and there was a creek there as well. Mm-hmm. They did natural plantings of the sawgrass and stuff that was tough to walk through. You had the ocean. You had the ocean on the east, or the bay on the east, and then they built a Cuba line in the others.
Well, and a lot of people don't realize this, and I don't think I think it was discovered when they did this, when they were building the parking garage in the early to mid '90s. There used to be a basketball court about where the little pond is and the bridge is for the parking garage. Okay. So where the buses are. These are okay. And the park went there. There was tennis courts on that side. And there was a little Coquina parking lot over there. But when they went to dig out that pond and they got rid of the thing, they discovered another Cuba line.
Really?
There was a first line of defense of the crisscross of the palm trees that were pointed, and some of those were still preserved. And they were when they dug that pond, they discovered that, and I was able to get down in there. I thought it was so freaking cool and stuff like that. But that was the northernmost part of the city where that Cuba line was, and where Old City House was the southern, and nothing really was outside of that except for Fort Mose, which was north of the city, which was the protector of north of the city.
Which was brilliant, by the way.
And south of the city was down at Crescent.
Eventually Fort Matanzas.
Fort Matanzas, where Fort Matanzas was. And that was the lookout. There was, if you go over to the San Sebastian, there was also a small little outpost. Pretty much where I think they call it, it's Robert Haling Park.
Okay.
So it's at the end of Riberia.
Yeah.
And there was another little outpost there because of the way that creek came in. And, people think about, well, the inlet was right here. The inlet wasn't there until the late 30s, early 40s. Right. The inlet was where Anastasia State Park is, almost where Embassy Suites is now. That inlet was just north of Embassy Suites, and it came in, and that's why the lighthouse, which I think is one of the most haunted places in St. Augustine, that's why the lighthouse is located where it is, because that was the inlet of St. Augustine on Salt Run. And people are like, oh, well, if you know anything about boats and stuff like that, you would go, why is the lighthouse there? That's why. That was the entranceway. Right. You had to work your way through Salt Run before you got to the fort.
Right. The bayfront, yeah.
Yeah, because, if you look at it right now, it's like, oh, wow, the fort's very exposed. It wasn't. Right. It wasn't exposed at all. It was, that happened, to help water traffic and commerce in St. Augustine. And I don't think a lot of people realize during World War II, the Ponce was home for the Coast Guard on the East Coast. Yeah. So it was the Coast Guard's headquarters for 4 years. There was no Ponce Hotel for those 4 years. It was the home of the Coast Guard. So,
and if you go into the men's room on the ground floor, you'll see above some of the stalls, officers, and then it says nothing for the enlisted men.
Well, I can tell you, in the men's room, if you walk in the first entrance, and Blake, if you're there, you can see this. If you walk in the entrance, there's a little space, and then there's another door. It's not really a door; it's a doorway. But immediately to the left, there's a wooden panel. When I was there, I noticed. I've always been this horrible, inquisitive person, but I noticed a screw that seemed out of place. So I had to take the screw out. So I took the screw out and I pushed on it, and it's a panel that opens. and we could drop down into the basement. There's a basement
Okay,
there.
right, yeah.
And that was the entrance. It was like almost a secret entrance. I don't know if it was during Prohibition or when it was, but it was about a 5-foot drop. You jump down in there, and we play flashlight tag in the basement. I think what is it? The time has traveled enough where I can't get in trouble for this.
Right.
But I mean, and then we'd have to lift each other up, and then we'd have to crawl up that way because you couldn't get out the other way because those doors would be padlocked.
For those Flagler students listening to our show, check it out and let us know.
Blake, but if you're in Ponce Hall and you walk in the men's bathroom, immediately to the left, you'll see a line of a secret doorway, and it has like a little screw in it, and it's screwed shut.
Okay.
But I was able to, and I take.
Is it in the main atrium again?
Huh?
Is it in the main atrium, like that area of Ponce Hall?
If you're in the rotunda,
Yep.
and if you're walking in the front door where, and I don't know if people know this, where the frogs are and the fountains around it, that's a sundial.
Right, and it's also a sword. It's the hilt and the scabbard of a sword.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's a handle.
Right.
Yeah. And it's a sundial, and the frog with his hand in his mouth is 12 o'clock. But if you walk in there, you go in the rotunda and you go to the right past the security, the men's bathroom are right there, and it's immediately when you walk into the left, it's right there.
You can tell which one of the turtles, by the way, represents the winter because he's wearing a turtleneck.
Okay, I have to look at that. I didn't know that one.
Yeah,
I didn't
you
know
got the
that
four.
one.
You got the front, but you got the 4 turtles in there representing the seasons,
Okay, all right.
and the winter one's got a turtleneck on.
Did you know that?
The others just have turtlenecks.
All right, kings and the deck of cards. Each one of those kings represents a famous king. Did you know that?
I did not.
All right, so like one of them's Charlemagne, and Blake, please look this up. I'm going to try and get it right. I know one of them's Caesar.
Okay.
One of them's Charlemagne. One of them I think is Charles. Not the Charles we have now. But each one of the kings represents
A real king.
a real king in cards.
All right. Here.
have it, Blake?
So I have it here. So King of Spades. What'd you say it was?
I know one of them is Charlemagne. One of them is Caesar. I think one of them. I want to say King Charles, but what was the king that
All right. Let's go. All right.
You think
Lionhearted?
Richard.
King
Richard.
Richard
all right.
Lionhearted.
All right. King of Spades.
Yes.
It's actually David, King of Israel from the Old Testament.
King
Okay.
David. Okay.
All right. King of Clubs. What do you think?
I'll go with Charlemagne on that one. I'm going to say Charlemagne until I get it right.
Lenny, big guess.
Say Caesar.
I'll say Caesar.
Alexander the Great.
Okay.
All right. Well,
All right.
King of Hearts.
Caesar. Say Charlemagne.
all right. Charlemagne.
Charlemagne.
Hey, we're good. We're there. We're a team. We're a team. We got it. So wait a second. Who's the
Diamond.
king of diamonds?
King of Diamonds.
Caesar.
Which one?
Julius.
It is Julius.
It was Augustus. I want my money back. It was Augustus.
I was going to joke around and say it was
Octavius.
Augustus.
Yeah. It was Caligula.
Do you know what the 4 queens are?
Yeah, it's a hotel in Las Vegas.
Yeah. It's on Fremont Street.
Yep.
We've been there. We
Yeah.
won money there.
Yeah.
It's when we started our big streak on the roulette. Was at the 4 Queens.
I thought we won at the D.
Huh?
I thought we want more money at the D.
Oh, no, but we started at the 4 Queens, and we won.
The Fremont experience, yeah.
Well, we won 7 or 8 in a row where we were playing on the outside line.
Right.
$100, and we were playing a black chip and $100, and then we win, we walk away, we go to a different casino and play $100 there. And was it 7 in a row, Blake, or 8 in a row? It was ridiculous.
I thought it was 8 in a row.
What was it?
8 in a row.
8 in a row.
Nice.
But we actually did more. We actually did more money on Fremont than like the main casinos themselves.
100%. So, Fremont's an interesting experience all
Oh,
by
yes.
itself. All right, we
Hence
got to talk about our
they call it the
sponsors.
Fremont experience for
Yeah.
just that reason.
It is 100% an experience. All right, Coquina Coast Realty, give me a call, 904-669-7901. I can help you out with commercial or residential. I'm here for you. And if I can't help you, I'll get you to the right person who can. Kaiser's Deli and Market. This guy, Kurt Kaiser, I don't know if you know this man, but he's an okay guy.
He's all right.
He's all right. We're going to keep him.
I would.
We're going to keep him. He's a Red Sox fan, but
And the Bears.
we still gotta love him. All right, best deli in town. Get over there. Try the Bollox. I haven't had a bad. I've never had a bad sandwich.
No,
there.
it's good. And the new ciabatta bread and the hoagie bread, it's fresh every day from a bakery brought down from Jacksonville.
The pastrami
You're not going wrong.
gets in.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. If you're a pastrami lover, you're going to fall in love with Kaiser's immediately.
Mm-hmm.
All right, St. Augustine Pirate Museum. They do an amazing job. They have the Colonial Oak. They have
cannons.
They have real cannons that shoot, and you get to play with the cannons in
Yeah.
the Pirate Museum.
Yeah.
That's mine and Maeve's favorite part. They have over 800 artifacts. The St. Augustine Pirate Museum located right there on Sponsor Row. All right, Aver Kresge and Associates. They're simply the best. These guys keep me out of trouble. They're wonderful people. They've been my accountants for over a decade, and I'm not an easy guy to be the accountant for. I got a lot of different things. The old irons in the fire.
Yeah.
I got irons in the fire. I got boots in the fire. I got hats in the fire. I got everything in the fire. So, but Aver Kresge and Associates, they keep me straight. 3 bars in one. Meehan's
Ooh,
Irish
baby.
Pub. Talk about the Irish cream a little bit.
Oh, that's just first of all, they make it fresh every day. Heavy cream, whiskey, and some magic they put in there. It is just fabulous. A little of that on ice, it's dessert, which is tough to compete with because their key lime pie is quite possibly one of the best, if not the best, in the city. And their presentation on the key lime pie is absolutely brilliant from a kitchen point of view. It's brilliant. But their Irish cream is fantastic. You add that to a cocktail, and it is just delicious.
It's wonderful.
I like that. I like that with a little Kahlua mixed into that, because we were talking about Black Russians and White Russians before
Yeah.
we got on air.
Yeah.
And man, you use a little bit of Kahlua in the Irish cream, and it is just good.
It's wonderful. All right. Also wonderful, St. Augustine Distillery. We're drinking the Saint tonight. Mine's almost gone. Smooth bourbon. You think you don't get good bourbon in Florida? You have not been to the St. Augustine Distillery. It is amazing.
And their new rum was we did the rum a couple of weeks ago.
The reserve rum.
That's just fabulous too.
Yeah, the reserve rum to me is. I talked about it on Tuesday night. It's one of the best rums I've ever had.
It's nice, dark. It's smooth. It's full bodied. It's delicious.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, and Citygate Spirits. These guys, you talk about unique flavors, wonderful flavors. Lenny, your chef hat coming out. You might have missed a career in a mixology.
I was a bartender for many years.
Yeah, so you might have missed a little bit of career there.
So I think we're gonna have to play with some more of those offbeat flavors and make some more cocktails.
Yeah, I think so. I want to see what you can do with cookie dough. I might send cookie dough home with you, and we do cookie
Okay.
dough next week.
Okay.
So, but
Got a
getting
half a
back.
quarter heavy cream at home. I could play.
Getting back to it, we still have a lot of cities. We talked mostly about St. Augustine. We talked a little bit about the lighthouse. I still think the lighthouse and the fort might be the 2 most haunted areas, but you think,
Fort's interesting.
yeah, you think it's Old City House.
From my experiences.
Yeah, my personal experience was Catalina's,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I did a. I was very, very fortunate of this. We invited back family members of. They were called students, but they were actually prisoners of the fort, of the Kiowa.
Yeah.
And
They were guests. They were guests.
Sue and there was guest. What? You got to talk.
Oh no! I think all of our cameras just went out.
Every single one of them.
I don't know. Oh, we're haunted.
Wait, we actually are doing a haunted show, but we're still our cameras went out, but we
Is
actually
our audio still going?
we still have audio going, is what it looks like. I think our show really is haunted by itself.
It
All
could
right,
be.
I'm not gonna lie. That is pretty wild. Do you know what just happened?
Wait a
Mike?
second. Those cords popped themselves out?
They didn't just fall, did they?
I hope not.
Okay, in case you're wondering, Blake is reattaching cords that may have fallen out on their own during the show.
Wow.
So if you're still
There.
listening,
We're back.
All right, we're back up.
all of them go out?
That is the wild. And Pete just stuck his head in here. Pete, we're doing a show about hauntings,
Oh, good.
and everything just went out, and the cords fell out, and
All of the cords?
two of them,
Wow.
2 of the 3 cameras, the cords fell out.
Wow.
And my
And that
hands,
is
my
the-
hands never left my body.
Not gonna lie, that is the wildest, craziest shit that could have happened during this show.
Kind of funky.
I'm not gonna blame Nana, but damn it, Nana. So
And Susan, when you're up at the bathroom, the upstairs bathroom, women's room at Harry's, just ask for Catalina. That's who you want to talk to.
yeah, and Bobby, there is not an alligator in the pond at the VIC at
Right.
the visitor, because when I was working on the Renaissance, we had to de-water the area for the parking garage.
Right.
So when we de-watered our area, it drained all the ponds.
Okay.
Not a single alligator was in there. So no alligators are in there. But I want to talk about something I talked about on Tuesday night when I went to do my research. I grew up in DeLand. And most
this
people,
is funny,
most
yeah.
people know about DeLand. And I'm going to have to lean down here. So I started to Google Cassadaga, Florida. Blake, do you happen to have the picture of the chair I was talking about at Cassadaga, Florida?
Yeah,
We call-
I'll pull it up in a bit.
we called it the death chair. But in the article I found, and I didn't know this article existed. In the article I found, they called it the devil's chair. And what it was, when you were growing up in DeLand or near that area, on your 18th birthday, if you had any, I don't know, give me a Jewish word, chutzpah or
Chutzpah.
you had any nuts.
Right.
That's more of a DeLand word than a
There you
Jewish
go,
word.
right.
But if you had any cojones,
Right.
you would go sit in the devil's chair. Your friends would walk you out, and then they would leave you.
Did they at
And then
least
they
give
would-
you a beer or a bottle?
You had a beer. Here's the other thing. Okay, and I didn't say this on Tuesday night, but it is in this article.
Okay.
You were supposed to leave a beer, a full beer, there, and then go check on it the next day. When you go check on it the next day, the beer would be empty. Or the beer can would be gone.
And the cemetery's
It probably-
caretaker was very grateful and happy.
Is this the red chair here?
Yeah, the red. Oh, I can't really see that one. Let me see if I can get in it. Yes, that's it.
Behind the tombstones.
That's it.
There you go.
That is it. And this kind of the chair that I sent you,
That was an AI image, Dad.
yeah, was very similar to this, but the one you sent me is the actual chair. The one you have up is the actual chair. You would have to sit in that red brick chair as your friends left. Now you have to remember, you don't have cell phones,
Right.
you don't have cameras, or you don't have flashlights.
Right.
They would leave you. They walk you out there with the beer and then leave you, and they'd walk away, get in the car, and drive away. You would have to sit there until they came back for you, or you were a wuss.
Yeah, well.
And I'm telling you, when you sat there, I never heard any voices, but I heard a lot of crackling. I thought it was my friends messing with me.
Right.
I don't think they actually came back because, like, where the woods was pretty wooded. You'd have to kind of figure out how to get there. But this was what I talked about Tuesday night, and evidently there's devil's chairs all over the country in different areas. But the one in Cassadaga, which is considered the psychic center of the world,
Yep.
is Cassadaga. Have you ever had your palm read?
No.
All right. So I'm gonna kind of freak you out a little bit, just a little bit, and the people out there watching, hopefully they can get this. So I got my palm read. They talked about previous lives and stuff like that. In one of my
In
previous
Cassadaga, this was.
in Cassadaga,
Okay.
In Cassadaga, you go there and you kind of
Right,
get your
pick-
palm read.
Pick a medium, any medium.
yeah,
Right.
you pay your $6 or whatever it is. One of my palm readings, they said in one of my previous life, I was a dog in my previous life, and they said if you don't believe me, you have a very high bone behind your ear, just like a dog does. So if you reach right there behind my ear, right there.
I fall for that every time. Pete, the mic is broke because Troy bit me. Every time you do that to me. Every time.
I'm sorry. I had to tell that joke.
Fair enough.
I told that joke one time in college, and the girl screamed so loud and fell backwards out of her seat. Everyone, I mean, we're in the student union center when I was telling this joke, and all my other buddies, my baseball guys had already used it on them and stuff, so they knew what was about to happen, and it was just. But that was one of my better reactions. I'm not gonna lie, and I'm glad we got that on camera.
Thank you.
But no, Casadega is known for all its mimes and stuff like that, and that's an area I grew up in. And the funny thing is I literally just told this story on Tuesday night.
Trivia, yeah.
Tuesday night. So
Yeah.
all right, we have time for maybe one or two more. I wanted to talk a little bit about Gettysburg.
Okay.
What other city you have? You have Savannah.
I've got Savannah and I've got L.A.
All right, give me a story. I have New Orleans and Gettysburg, but the one in Gettysburg that I found very, very interesting was the orphanage.
Yeah.
So, what do you have in Savannah?
Those are the kids that were chained up.
Yes.
Yeah. Savannah, there's a bunch of stuff. There's a fine restaurant called the Old Pink House, where we had dinner when we were in Savannah.
Wonderful restaurant.
Absolutely. Haunted. Mm-hmm. You know, one of the owners, James Habershaw, hasn't left the building either.
Okay.
You know, Elvis keeps leaving the building. These people don't.
Yeah.
James Habershaw was there. In the basement in particular, our waitress apparently was on very good terms with him because she was telling us stories about him, and that's a pretty classy joint. You need to make a reservation. Food was good.
If you go to Savannah,
country.
eat at I think it's called either the Little Pink House or the Old Pink House.
The old Pink House.
Okay.
OLDE Pink House.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice square.
They throw an E on there to make it look fancy.
Exactly. But the Sorrel Weed House is, one of these mansions in Savannah. That's probably one of the most haunted places in Savannah. They do ghost tours there. They're big on the paranormal that's in that place. You've got the Pirates House, which is a well-known restaurant now. That's haunted by a bunch of dead pirates, and that was the place that was the inspiration for Robert Louis Stevenson to write Treasure Island. Mm-hmm. And it also might be one of these places that has a trapdoor in the basement where they would, Shanghai sailors.
Yeah.
And then the Moon River Brewing Company is a big brewery now, but it was a Civil War hospital.
Oh.
And, there was a lot of,
in Gettysburg, that's what a lot of them were.
Yeah.
As Civil War hospitals, including the orphanage that we're talked about. So,
yeah. So there's a bunch of stuff in Savannah for sure. And it's just a neat city. It really is. Plus the cemeteries. Mm-hmm. You got my favorite signer of the Declaration of Independence buried there, Button Gwinnett. Button Gwinnett, yep.
Okay. It's a great name.
Named the whole county after him.
Gwinnett County?
Yep. Turned out he was killed in a duel.
Mm.
Yep.
Wasn't Andrew Jackson? He took a couple of people out.
No, it wasn't Andrew Jackson. No, it was.
All right. Last but not least, because we only have 2 minutes, is Gettysburg.
Yeah.
All right. So in Gettysburg, they have so many different things. In New Orleans, there's a couple theaters and the Opera House and some of those things that are just wonderful stories. But the orphanage, the children's orphanage in Gettysburg, it was originally a private home during the famous battle. It was during the Battle of Gettysburg. It was converted into a makeshift hospital for the wounded soldiers. Its cellar was filled with bodies of the dead and dying. After the battle, the facility was converted into the National Soldiers Orphanage Homestead. So children of the Battle of Gettysburg who lost their parents in the Battle of Gettysburg, and because there was some civilian casualties also.
It's interesting. There was only in looking up Gettysburg, there's only reference to one civilian casualty.
Really?
Only one woman. Mm-hmm. So I found that very surprising.
I
didn't dig any further because
it made it sound like there was more.
It's possible, but this was
and maybe the moms died of other diseases or something like that, and the dads died during the war. But how it became the most haunted was after the orphanage. All right. And it was the headmistress, Rosa Carmichael. She became the headmistress, and this is where she would chain the orphans down in that cellar where they kept the dead, which was a converted basically a morgue at the time, and she basically kept them down in that cellar and hid them out and basically made it a secret cellar where she could torture these kids. And these are the children of this haunted house, and it's all the tormented victims of Rosa J. Carmichael in Gettysburg. So it's one of the darker ones that I read about. A lot of the hauntings that you see on ghost tours and stuff like that, they were associated around forbidden love.
Yeah.
Or mistresses, like the one at the fort.
Right, exactly, with Dolores and Lieutenant Abela.
With the officer at the fort and the voices they hear and
her perfume that you can still smell to this day.
The rose petal perfume that you can smell.
Yep. She got busted for that.
Yeah, so that's how she got caught.
Yeah,
that's how he got caught. That's how he got
right,
caught.
Exactly. He smelled like her.
Her perfume on him got him caught. But just, such interesting reading out there. If you guys get a chance and just, hopefully we gave you a little taste of the hauntings in different cities. And, we only touched on three or four cities.
Barely, yeah.
And just the amazing stories that are attached with it. Just so much fun. Thank you guys so much. Please hit that share button.
Support our sponsors.
This is Bollox, Talks and Tangents, and we'll see you next week.